Hello and welcome to my channel, Babbling Books. If it's your first time here, my name is Elaine. So this is going to be my September wrap-up. I was kind of all over the place in September. I was pretty nonfiction heavy as well, but I also have a cozy mystery, 2 YA, a science fiction. I think the rest are nonfiction. So 1 was on audio and 8 were books I have physical copies of. So let's get into it. I want to start by talking about these lit chat cards. They're conversation starters that basically revolve around literature or reading. I originally saw these on Lauren and the Books on her channel. And I tried to find something comparable, but I couldn't find anything. So I basically just gave up. But last weekend, my mom had the kids and my husband and I kind of went out on a date. And we had lunch and went to the bookstore. And I saw these. There was only 1 copy or 1 box. And I snatched it up. And I'm going to make sure to link Lauren's channel down below. She's a very, very warm personality. I enjoy watching her videos. She sort of just gives off this joyous warmth that I enjoy having in my life, really. So check out her channel if you haven't. So I'm gonna randomly grab a card. So this one is The Lion and the Witch in the Wardrobe, which I read a long time ago. And the question on the back is, one morning you open your closet to discover that it is actually a portal into the world of one of your favorite books. Which literary world is it? You know, my first inclination is to say Harry Potter, but with my luck, I'd be a muggle. What world would it be? You know, I'm going to say, since we're talking about magic here, I am going to go with Harry Potter. I would have loved to have been a kid in Hogwarts, or maybe a teacher at Hogwarts, because as a child, it was such a warm, cozy, and comfortable atmosphere. I would like to revisit that again. So that's what I'm going to go with. What about y'all? Is there a world that you would absolutely adore to be part of? My husband loves that question. He is a huge fan of literary RPG books, and he cannot wait until virtual reality, like full submersion, becomes a thing. All right. The first book is The Hidden Lives of Tudor Women by Elizabeth Norton. This was an audiobook. I struggled with this book for a few different reasons. It's structured following the 7 stages of life, which you may be familiar with from Shakespeare. And I thought that was pretty clever. And it's keeps the book sort of in a chronological order, starting with birth and infancy and continuing on to death and burial. My problem is that every single woman in Tudor England seems to have been named Elizabeth, Mary, Catherine, Jane. And when you're listening to an audiobook, having names repeated constantly can be difficult to follow. And in this case, when the author was talking about giving birth, for instance, what that was like for a Tudor woman, and she would describe something in a letter or written in a diary from a woman named Elizabeth. And then she would talk about another Elizabeth and her experience giving birth. And that got confusing. I ended up deciding that to finish this, I needed to only listen to it when that was the only thing I was doing. So basically, before I went to bed at night, this is what I put on. I just laid there and focused on it, because otherwise I found myself getting lost. My other issue is the author tries to maintain a balance between the lives of nobility and the lower class. She tries to spread the information through all of the classes. And she does succeed pretty well. And I think the actual problem is there's not enough historical documents about the lives of lower class women in Tudor England. The nobility and royalty especially, a lot of letters and diaries and documentation has been preserved where it wasn't for lower class women. So I don't believe that's the fault of the author, that this book is much heavier towards information for nobility. And my third problem, while I have done a lot of reading about the Tudors, it was specific to Henry VIII, his wives, and his children. So when I downloaded this and it said the hidden lives of Tudor women, I assumed it was going to be all sorts of Tudor women from all walks of life. And it was, but the last 50% of the book was incredibly heavy on information regarding Queen Elizabeth, Elizabeth I, Elizabeth Tudor. And I have read so many things and watched so many things about Elizabeth Tudor that I found myself bored when the author would bring her up, because most of it was pretty general information, things that I'd already heard before. So this book and I didn't really get along, but it seems to be more of a me problem and not the book or the author. So I think this would probably work really well for somebody who's just getting into Tudor history or hasn't done a lot of reading about the Tudors. This would probably work for you. It just didn't work for me. So, all right, on to the next book. These are not in any particular order. I just reached behind me and grabbed them. So this is another nonfiction book. This is 1776 by David McCullough. So this is actually a Pulitzer Prize winning book. I kind of toyed with the idea of making videos about Pulitzer Prize winning books, and I decided not to because there was a lot of books on the list that I wasn't really interested in reading. So if there was a book that happened to win a Pulitzer Prize in about something I was interested in reading, then I would read it. And that's how I came across this. So this focuses on the first year of the American Revolution. To be clear, this does not discuss events leading up to the revolution. It discusses from January 1776 until January 1771. So this is not a well-rounded book covering the entire Revolutionary War, just 1776. But what is fantastic about that is see the size of the book. I mean, now it's not a huge book, but considering it only covers 12 months, it is very detailed. The author tells the story chronologically, so it's very easy to follow. It is very clear, and there are a lot of people in here that you probably remember from grade school, high school, college, whatnot. Nathaniel Greene, Henry Knox, John Adams, and of course, George Washington is pretty much on every single page of this book. The author also gives you details about the British generals, George III, and what the British people thought of the colonies and this rebellion, and sending British men to the colonies to put down this rebellion, what they thought of that as well. I loved this. I cannot recommend it enough. I found it incredibly easy to read and very, very informative. And all it did was whet my appetite for more. So I started another book about the American Revolution, but covering the entire thing rather than just the 1 year. Recommend this one for any history lover or a history lover in your life. They would probably enjoy that. I'll Never Tell by Abigail Haas is a young adult teen novel. about a group of kids that go to Aruba. Now, I am going to read the synopsis from the cover, and I'll explain why when I'm done. Spring break Aruba. It was supposed to be the best time of Anna's life. But then the unthinkable happens. Anna's best friend is found brutally murdered. And when the local police begin to investigate the crime, suspicion falls on one person, Anna. They think she's dangerous. They're determined to prove her guilt. With the police and media sparking a witch hunt against her, Anna is running out of time to prove her innocence. But as she digs deeper into her friend's final moments, she finds a tangled web of secrets, lies, and betrayals. Will she clear her name in time? Okay, when I read that to you, did you picture a teenage girl running around Aruba, interviewing people, breaking into places she's not supposed to be, snooping around, trying to find clues that will exonerate her or point a guilty finger at somebody else? Because that's what I pictured. Now, I don't want this to be a spoiler, and it kind of is, but I honestly think it should have been on the cover. So Anna, she is arrested within like 20 pages of this book, and she spends the entire current timeline in jail. She doesn't do any investigating, despite the fact that that's what the author leads you to believe in the synopsis. She doesn't do any investigating at all. So there's two timelines. You have the past, where you are reading about the kids in Aruba and what they're doing. And then you have the current timeline where Anna is in jail and standing trial. And then those two timelines converge and you find out what actually happened. Okay, so once I let go of what I thought this book was and decided to just try to enjoy it, I did. And it was intriguing and I was interested. I wanted to know what actually happened, what was going to happen to Anna. And I got to the end and I was thinking this is going to be a 4-star read. I begin the last chapter. It's about 2.5 pages. And I was upset. It's very rare for an ending to ruin an entire book for me, but in this case it did. If the author took that last chapter, completely took it out, threw it away, I would have given this a 4-star rating. The last chapter tanked the entire book for me, and I can't explain why without doing a spoiler. If you have read this, please let me know what you thought of it, what you thought of the ending. If you thought the book was going to be something else than it actually was. Because I'm curious if maybe I just completely jumped to unfounded conclusions. And like I said before, I can't talk about a lot of the nitty-gritty things in here, where I would like to make a little checklist of all the things that led to me giving this a 2-star rating without doing a spoiler. But I don't recommend this, and I'm still really grumpy about it, so I doubt I'll ever read a book by that author. Brownies and Broomstick. So this is by Bailey Caites, and it is book 1 in the Magical Bakery Mystery. So you have the main character named Katie Lightfoot. She is a professional baker. She's originally from Savannah, Georgia, and her aunt and uncle still live in Savannah, and they call her and they say, hey, we are going to open up a bakery. Would you like to come be the head baker? And Katie jumps at the chance. She quits her job, sells her place, and moves into a very small but quaint little cottagey house. It has a babbling brook that runs through the backyard. And she is thrilled at the idea of being a head baker. And while she's trying to get this bakery up and running with her aunt and uncle, she discovers that she comes from a family of witches. Now, these witches are not like shooting fireballs from your hand kind of witches. They're hedge witches. Spices and herbs and flowing water, north, south, east, and west, candles, all very 90s. And her uncle is accused of murder. And so Caites starts to investigate this murder to prove her uncle is innocent while trying to manage this bakery and the fact that she is a witch. There is a love triangle, but it's such a minor part of the story that it's almost inconsequential. So don't let that stop you from reading this if you're one of those people who hates love triangles. It really doesn't matter. It's cute. I love bakeries. I love to bake. I love witches. So a lot of things in this book is just perfect for me. I recommend it, and I want to read the second book. That's the kind of book that I would like to read on vacation or during a road trip. What Lives in the Woods by Lindsey, Currie. So this is a middle grade book, and it is about a young girl named Jenny Anderson. She's about 13 years old, and her parents have just told her that the entire family is going to be spending a month during the summer at a place called Woodmore Manor on the shore of Lake Michigan. So Woodmore Manor is a century old. It's not in the best condition, but the main character's father restores historical homes back to their original glory. So that's what brings them there. They're going to be staying by themselves in the manor, and Jenny is a lover of mystery novels. Agatha Christie is her favorite, and she wants to be a writer when she grows up. So they move into this manor, and Jenny starts noticing some weird things happening, noises that can't be explained, and she's the only person that hears or sees any of these things happening. My problem with this book, I feel like this whole video is very negative, but my problem with this book is there was a lot of contradictions. Jenny is portrayed as a scaredy cat. Anytime a noise would happen, she would freak out and she would scream or cry. There's a lot of crying, and that's okay. But then we're supposed to think that this is a girl, our character, that would grab a flashlight at 2 o'clock in the morning and go hunting for this mysterious noise. And maybe those two things could work together. Maybe there's a bridge to bring those things together, but the author did not create that bridge. So it felt very forced and contradictory. And then to make it worse, Jenny is also portrayed as this bookish, nerdy, smart girl who spends every free moment reading mysteries, but she doesn't try to solve the mystery of this manor that she's staying in any sort of smart or logical manner. She doesn't go to the library and try to find newspaper articles or a book about the area. She doesn't try to find the oldest person in the town and ask about the family that used to live there. She doesn't do anything. She just walks around the manor trying to find out a source of noises and things like that. So it just didn't work for me. I don't think this is a book that most adults would enjoy. A child probably would. I'm not sure they would pick up on those contradictions. So I'm just going to give it back to my daughter, not say anything, and hope that when she reads it, she enjoys it. A YA book. Here Lies Daniel Tate by Cristin Terrill. So this is about a unnamed protagonist who is about 18, 19 years old, and he was a runaway. So he's lived out on the streets or alone for years. And once he aged out of the system, he decided that he was going to pretend to be a 16-year-old boy who was so traumatized he couldn't speak. That way he could get into group homes away from adults that could threaten him, and he could have a free bed and free meals and free clothes and free medical care. And if they started pushing too hard, tried to make him see a therapist or go to a psychiatric facility or anything like that, he would just run away and start this over somewhere else. I do want to let you guys know that despite the fact that he is legally an adult staying with minor children at these group homes. Nothing untoward happens. So no concerns about anything like that. So anyway, so one day, this protagonist finds himself in a situation where he is forced to tell the police what his name is. And he thinks of the first name that comes to mind, and that is Daniel Tate. Daniel Tate is a boy that he, the protagonist, found on a missing child website. So he thinks this will buy him a few days and he'll get away and he'll be able to start this whole con over in another city. But before he can get away, Daniel Tate's family shows up and they whisk the protagonist, now known as Daniel Tate, away to California. And the protagonist, aka Daniel Tate, he starts to realize that maybe this was the wrong family to con. So obviously the protagonist is not behaving like a hero. He is re-traumatizing this entire family. And it's pretty horrible, the idea of pretending to be a missing child. But despite all of those things, we get to know the protagonist and you start to root for him. And there's a lot of secrets that this family has been keeping, and they start to be uncovered and it starts to get pretty creepy. And you start to feel all of this tension and you keep thinking that he's going to get caught, and you're super concerned what's going to happen when he does get caught, because you're starting to think that this family, something is going on with them, but you really don't know because everything is told from the protagonist's point of view. And he is a little bit of an unreliable narrator, but he's very honest about that. So I do recommend this one. That was a lot of fun to read, and I would read something else by that author. And we have Recursion by Blake Crouch. So Blake Crouch is one of my favorite authors. I read and absolutely love Dark Matter as well as the Pines trilogy. So I actually put off reading this because I was afraid it was going to be disappointing, and I don't want to be disappointed in Blake Crouch. So I read this and I finished it in a day because it was so good. Okay, so this is science fiction, but not in like the sense of like space travel or aliens. So it takes place in modern times. And the main character's name is Barry Sutton. He is a detective for the New York Police Department. And there is a phenomenon going around called false memory syndrome. And they don't know what causes it or how you catch it or really anything about it, except it causes people to have false memories. So you literally could just be washing the dishes on a normal day and all of a sudden you get a headache and a bloody nose, and the next thing you know, your mind is full of memories of a life that you have not lived. So you could remember being married, having a husband that you've never had. You can remember the way his hands feel when you hold hands, the way his beard scratches your face when you kiss, his smell, but none of it's real. And not only do you have visceral memories, you have the emotion that comes with it. So a lot of people are driven mad, commit suicide. Some people can live with these false memories and some people can't. But it's a truly horrific sounding disease. So it starts out a little bit slowly, and then Barry discovers the source. And once that happens, that's not a spoiler. Once that happens, it takes off like a shot, and I could not put this book down. I had to because I had children, but I really did not want to. We ordered pizza that night, which we don't do too often, but I just really wanted to finish this book. So very much recommend this. It is mind twisty and so clever. I absolutely love it. I cannot recommend Blake Crouch enough. He's my hero. Okay, he's really not, but I do very much love his books. All right, 2 more to go. The Art of Crayon. So this is a nonfiction book about crayons. So crayon is a generic term to describe a art medium that is like in the shape of like a stick, basically. And it can be wax-based, oil-based, chalk, charcoal, and crayon. It's funny because the first time I remember coming across that word as a reader, I want to say it was Little Women, or maybe it was a Jane Austen novel, but I remember being surprised because it wasn't, what was described was not like a Crayola crayon. To me, it sounded more like a pencil, which in some cases is sort of what a crayon can look like. But anyway, so this is by Lorraine Bell. And inside of the book, inside of here, she discusses some professional artists who use crayons as one of their main artistic tools. I mean, some of this is just absolutely just gorgeous. And I cannot believe that it was accomplished with a crayon. And so then the author goes on to show you how you can create some different types of artwork using Crayola crayons, which are the cheapest and easiest crayons to access. And not only is it drawings, there is also artists that use crayons to make sculptures. So let's see if you can see this. This is a art installation at the university, Texas Tech University. And he is one of the few private individuals who actually has an account with the Crayola company because he orders so many crayons. And then there are people who carve crayons. And it was just a really interesting book. And after she introduces you to a few artists and you see some beautiful images of their art, there is a section where she walks you through creating your own art. So it offers a lot of really different and very interesting things. If you are an artist, I would suggest this. If you are a friend or family of an artist, this would be something wonderful to get them. And I would think, especially for a teen or a young adult, this has a very modern feel to it. And I was really impressed at the history of the crayon, looking at the artist's work, and the images are just gorgeous. I love bright colors. You can't really see, but my shelf back here is kind of a pastel color, but the rest of my room is done in black with jewel tones because that's my favorite. But I love bright colors. So this is something that I'm really interested in. And I love working with pastels because the colors are so vibrant, especially on black paper. All right, last book. Banned books. This is a Penguin Random House publication, DK. And it's all about banned books. So it starts out with the Decameron, which is from the 1370s, and it walks you through some information about the author and the book itself, and why it was banned and whether or not it's still being challenged. And it goes all the way through the different centuries until you end up in modern times. And the last book mentioned in here is from 2021. And that is 1,000 Years of Joys and Sorrows. So it's a relatively modern publication, and I really enjoyed this. It was fun to read about the authors and their reaction to finding out that there were people pushing to ban the books from the public libraries and the public schools. And I was actually, well, mildly surprised when I was reading this, because there were some towns mentioned that were within about an hour's driving distance from here. And as you may or may not know, Texas, especially where we are, is part of the Bible Belt. And so once I thought about it for about 15 seconds, I was like, okay, well, that's not that surprising. But, you know, you don't really expect to see little towns like Anna, Texas, and Caites, Texas to be mentioned in a publication like this. But It was. So I very much recommend this one if you have any interest in banned books. I added some stuff to my TBR from in here, and I looked up a couple of authors and read their biographies, not actual books. I read them online. And on top of that, it's also just a lovely little book to maybe put on your bookcase or on your coffee table. And if you're interested in reading more about censorship, that's a pretty good addition to your library. And that is it. That's all the books that I read in September. And I'm hoping October is going to be a lovely reading month. And we're going to have some cold weather, I hope. There is nothing worse than trying to go trick-or-treating when it's hot. You sweat the makeup off, the masks and wigs and multiple layers for the costumes are so hot. And then you're doing all that walking. So I've got my fingers crossed that we're going to have at least a cool Halloween. I will settle for slightly warm if we can't have cool and cold. And that is it. So thank you very much for clicking on my video. If you haven't subscribed, please do if you would like. And I think I'm going to film a book haul tomorrow and hopefully have that up by tomorrow evening. So check back in sometime tomorrow and see if I've got that up for you guys. Bye.